Now that the NHR has closed down, what's next for expats or retirees looking to move to Portugal as far as tax schemes? Are there any updates?
Welcome back to Track Us Down. If you're just finding us, I'm Monique.
And I'm Doug.
In this latest vlog as a retired couple, we're sharing the information we know about life after the NHR here in Portugal and where things stand currently. We will also be sharing some interesting information about Madeira and how they may be keeping the tax incentive dream alive. Stay tuned to the end for that.
A few months back, we were all shocked when the Portuguese government announced the end of the non-habitual tax resident tax scheme that granted anyone, including Portuguese citizens, a lower tax rate for 10 years, provided they had not been tax residents of Portugal for the previous 5 years.
Many people, including foreign retirees and foreign expats and Portuguese citizens living abroad, took advantage of the NHR and came back to Portugal and reestablished themselves to take advantage of the tax scheme and to start a brand new life here in Portugal.
It definitely left a lot of people in limbo wondering what it all meant for them. Were they out of luck completely as far as moving abroad to Portugal, retiring to Portugal? Was there still a glimmer of hope? What did it all mean? And let's face it, compared to so many other places on people's lists as far as a retirement destination or somewhere to move abroad, Portugal still ranks at the top of most people's lists, especially when it comes to things like cost of living, healthcare, safety, climate. The list goes on, especially here on Madeira.
What we want to share is that there still may be a glimmer of hope for those of you who are hoping to have a soft landing coming here to Portugal, especially Madeira.
And as you know, we have been all over Portugal, all over mainland Portugal, and we still say that Madeira is the best place to retire, move abroad, or stay for an extended period of time.
So Portugal recently announced a new tax scheme to replace the NHR, and it no longer does include pensions. But some see it as being more fair, more modern, and that it hopes to attract more highly skilled individuals as well as more businesses, as many other countries do.
Was it a mistake though? Will it actually hurt Portugal as far as attracting new residents? Only time will tell.
There was a lot of uncertainty about the timeline to apply for the NHR when the announcement first came out. Recently, we had a conversation with our tax lawyer in Lisbon about what is happening going forward now with this new tax scheme and the end of the NHR.
So here are some of the main takeaways from that conversation.
Now the timeline is clear. The approval of the budget in Portugal now confirms that the NHR will end for new applicants. The final version of the law has yet to be passed. The budget also included a transitional scheme for those who started moving to Portugal in 2023 to apply for the NHR in 2024.
We know now that a prior connection in one of 7 categories is enough to allow NHR in 2024. So basically, if you had started the process in 2023 in one of 6 ways, you can still be considered for NHR in 2024.
As we mentioned, Madeira, being semi-autonomous, may be on its own path, keeping the door open for retirees, pensioners, and other expats alike. The following are 7 categories that if you had a prior connection in 2023, you may still qualify for the NHR in 2024.
So the first category is a promise of employment with a contract signed up until December 31st, 2023, and whose duties must take place within Portugal.
The second category is a lease in Portugal concluded by October 10th, 2023.
The third category is a reservation contract or promissory contract for the acquisition of real estate concluded by October 10th, 2023.
The fourth category is enrollment or registration for dependents at a school in Portugal completed by October 10th, 2023.
And the fifth category is a residence visa or a residence permit valid until December 31st, 2023.
The sixth category, and this is a big one, is procedure initiated by December 31st, 2023 of granting a residence visa or residence permit with the competent entities in accordance with the current legislation applicable to immigration matters, namely through the request for an appointment or an actual appointment for submission of the request for the granting of the residence visa or residence permit, or also by submitting the request for the granting of a residence visa or residence permit. That was a mouthful.
And the last category, number 7, members of the households of people who meet the criteria we just talked about. So what does that all mean?
So it's very wordy, but there are 6 basic ways that you could have met the criteria for 2023. I found the October 10th date kind of interesting, that things couldn't be done after October 10th, except for in a few cases by December 31st. So if you meet any of those 6 ways in 2023, you may still qualify for NHR in 2024. And of course, with the 7th category, if you are a spouse or dependent or family member.
So we do know that there were many of you who were still able to get into the NHR because you had taken some steps earlier in 2023 up until the October, November, or December timeline, whether it was buying real estate or getting your residence permit, starting those kind of things. Some people were able to still squeak in.
So definitely check into those categories and do some further research to see if you would still qualify for the NHR here in 2024.
But there's still hope for others, I think.
All right, ending the NHR there, we're going to move on to the new tax scheme that Portugal has put forth. And it's called the TISRI, the Tax Incentive for Science, Innovation, and Research.
Now, this scheme requires either of these 2 very limited professions, either a PhD researcher or a university professor.
Or a role in a certified startup. Now, the startup certification here in Portugal is said to be quite rusty, but they are working on it, and hopefully they will get the kinks out of that.
What's interesting about the wording of this new legislation is that it gives Madeira or the Azores a ticket to accept whoever those islands want.
That's great.
However, there is no set criteria yet. Nothing is in place. It's just kind of a possibility that's included in the wording. So that's pretty exciting because we still say that Madeira is the best place to go if you're going to retire abroad or move abroad.
So that kind of does leave the door open if Madeira or the Azores decides that they still want people with pensions moving here or people who are expats working in some other way to come to Madeira. But of course, many things here are done on Portuguese time, and we know that that decision for the criteria, whether Madeira accepts that ticket and welcomes whoever they choose. We have not heard anything yet about that. When we know more, you'll know more.
The enticement of new residents to countries, including Portugal, is not a bad thing. Many countries, including Portugal, are losing residents every single year. With birth rate down, there's a general population decline, and countries do need new people coming in. And just recently, there's been a change of government. They've had national elections, and a different government is coming into power. And apparently this government is much more open to business and investments. So I wouldn't be surprised if they bring back some form of NHR or a golden visa or something like that. So fingers crossed for some form of expat, retiree, living abroad friendly tax scheme.
Pension friendly.
And pension friendly tax scheme going forward. Something that entices professionals or retired professionals to live a better second half of life here in Portugal. So of course, with that, if you like a good conversation about moving or living abroad, retiring abroad, living in Portugal, or just tips for living a better second half of life, make sure that you like this video and subscribe to our channel and leave a comment down below. We really appreciate your input. So what do you think of that? Is it still a good idea to move to Portugal, to retire to Portugal, or to live abroad here? Whether you're working online as a digital nomad or working remotely. What about a retiree? Is it still a good idea here going forward with the end of the NHR? Some people really think it still is.
We've actually met up with several people who have actually only started the process starting January, February, so they would not meet any of the criteria from 2023. And the NHR is just a part of what they were looking for, but there are so many more advantages to living in Portugal that Doug talked about before with the healthcare, the beauty, the people, everything else. The NHR just was a part of it, and it doesn't really affect their decision. And when you think of all the other places that are on the retiring list, whether that's South America, other places in Europe, but when you look at it as a whole, we still say that Portugal, Madeira in particular, still checks all the boxes.
And when you consider cost of living, the cost for healthcare or the lack of cost for healthcare, when you take everything into consideration and the lack of serious violent crime, all these things, many people believe that paying a little bit higher in taxes is still well worth it because at the end of the day, they're going to be safer, living a better second half of life, and their overall cost of living will actually be less.
Absolutely. There's many places that you see recommended for retirees, and I have to say that we took those off our list quite quickly because the safety aspect just isn't there. The stability of government just isn't there. That is something that it's really hard to talk about healthcare, cost of living, or any of those other things, weather, the beauty, if you're not safe. That's why we really feel that Madeira is a beautiful place to retire. And of course, like we said previously, with Madeira and the Azores being semi-autonomous, it'll be interesting to see what they decide that they do with that ticket that's been given to them to make their own decisions regarding what kind of expats or retirees or foreign people that they want to welcome to the island. So I'm interested in hearing what they decide to do. And let us know if you maybe fall into one of those 6 categories or 7 categories that would enable you to access the NHR here in 2024 with what was done in 2023. We'd be interested in knowing what your thoughts are on that and your thoughts on the new tax scheme, the TISRI. Thank you so much for spending a little bit of your day with us. And as always, check back in and
track us down.
I have to say, we took those off our list really, really quickly.